everyone. I'm doing a review today of the Shimmering Lights, that's the box it comes in, set from Prima Watercolor Confections. And I just want to apologise that I'm not actually doing a lot of this review kind of live, because I actually filmed it a week ago. And I wasn't overjoyed with it when I filmed it, so I'm not going to re-swatch everything because that's just daft, but I am re-recording it because I didn't like what I had before. So, this kind of follows on from the Pastel Dreams, Tropicals, Decadent Pies sets that I've reviewed previously. I haven't reviewed the classic set just because nothing in it really appealed to me that much, but Prima, I think, I've been in contact with Prima recently. They asked me if I wanted anything to review, and I said I would be really glad to review that set, so I don't know whether they'll actually send it to me, but I'm hoping they will. They have two new sets coming out in February, Odyssey and something with a ridiculous name. God, I can't remember it at all. But yeah, Odyssey and something else they have coming up. No, it's gone. Don't bother commenting to tell me what it's called. I do know what it's called, I've just momentarily forgotten. I'm hoping I can get hold of those to review those, sort of ready for when they come out. But I reviewed Pastel Dreams recently, and I'll link to that in the iCards up there now. And I've had this set a little while. I actually ordered, both of them came from the USA. One was from Amazon.com, one was from Amazon.co.uk, sold through, I think, Bic Warehouse possibly, as the vendor there, and Amazon USA was via Amazon properly. Both took about the same time to arrive, about 10 days, really not a big deal. And a few changes have happened to these since the early packs, like classics when I reviewed, sorry, like tropicals when I reviewed that. First thing is they've added on artist quality, and I've had a lot of comments from people saying, oh, well, they're not artist quality, blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people forget that when we say artist quality, quite often, we mean fine art quality. And there's a big difference between watercolour for fine art and watercolour for other art. These are watercolours intended for mixed media artists, art journalists and scrapbookers, which are just as valid forms of art. If you are a mixed media artist, you still need artist quality products. Your version of artist quality is not necessarily the same. It probably just means high pigment load. Whereas it probably does not mean light fast, because artist quality for an art journalist closed. So it doesn't matter if it's light fast. The light fastness is not a problem for the market these are intended for. They've also made a few changes within the box. These labels appeared a while ago. They haven't always been on them, but they've had them a while. What they have done is given all of the paints a name now. So rather than just being numbered, they all have a name. And I will link now in the iCards to my website, where I have an article about I think the Pastel Dreams set possibly, but there is a link in that article that will take you to the full colour chart of the whole series that's been released so far and the names for them. So if you bought Tropicals or Classics or Decadent Pies a year ago before they had names, they now have got names, so you can find out the names of those colours. I think the names in this set sound rather a lot like strippers. They're called things like Allure and Treasure and Champagne and well, I don't think Antique is probably a very good stripper. She's probably niche market. Chandelier. Apologies if any of you have called your children by any of these names, but they're clearly destined to work in a certain sector with names like that. My first view on them when I put them on the crap paper, and Prima, if you're watching, can you stop using this swatch paper? Because what this does is people swatch on this as the first thing they do, and it actually makes your paints look rubbish. So it's actually giving people a really bad first impression of your paints. So you might want to rethink. And the same with Jane Davenport. This paper is awful. It makes your paints look bad. So I swatched them all out and I thought they looked very samey. So I swatched them out again on paper. And I'll just show you them in the box. As always with the Prima sets, you get these lovely metallic metal enamelled tins with the thumb loop. Even if you hate the paints, these are actually worth more than these sets are. And I will have in the video description links to buy them for the UK, USA and now Canada via Amazon Associates, and you'll see in there the prices, and I'll convert them into all the currencies for you, because sometimes ordering from the US site and paying the postage is cheaper than ordering from the UK site. I know, mad, isn't it? But yeah, these are about £20 normally in the UK, so to get a set for £23 with the paints is really good value. And I thought, again, quite samey, and I was trying to figure out how this white is different from the white in the Decadent Pies set that is also metallic. The difference really is, I've looked at them, that one is really pearlescent and this one is really sparkly, so there is a difference, they're not the same paint. I swatched them out this time using this is a cold pressed watercolor paper, and I did a black line with pro marker, so an alcohol marker, because a lot of metallic colors only really show up on black. So let's go through them in order. So first of all, I've actually got the numbering wrong. That's not 48, that's 49, so slight mistake on my part. Top one there is gold, as it's really originally named, and it is a nice sparkly metallic gold. It looks good on a black background. It's not very opaque, but it is nice. Next one is Twinkle, which is a kind of gunmetal sort of colour, and that is, again, not unpleasant, fairly transparent. We then move on to Allure, which is like a sparkly Naples yellow, slightly more opaque, but nice. We then go on to Treasure 52, which I think looks kind of dirty. It's kind of like a yellow ochre with some sparkle. It looks unpleasant. It's not so bad on the camera, but in real life it just looks grubby. Bit more opaque than some of the others, but not as opaque as Allure was. Next we have Gaze, which is that, I'll turn it around, 53 Gaze, which is kind of like a jaune brillant, a flesh tint with metallic, and is fairly opaque. And then we have Antique 54, which is very transparent and metallic, and it's almost on a black background. You can just see the mica, you can't even see the colour. It doesn't lift very well from the pan either. It's a really transparent colour. 55 next, Coppered, which is disappointingly just like a transparent version of Glaze, so it's not that different, but it's not very sparkly either. 56 I really like, Flare, which is this metallic red. It's relatively transparent, but not perfectly. It looks more transparent on the video than it is in real life, and it's got a nice sparkle to it. It's a really nice deep red. I think it's dye based. It's not a sort of, it's very similar to Venetian red, but it isn't Venetian red because it isn't opaque, so I don't think it is very similar to it, you know, pigment wise. But Prima don't give us the pigment information, and I've been banging on at them for ages. They really need to start doing it. I'll tell you a little bit more about the origins of these paints in a minute, and it will become clear why I'm annoyed with them for not doing that. 57 next, which is Disco, which is a kind of disappointingly sort of fleshy kind of colour. It's a bit granulating, transparent, bit sparkly, not much. 58 is Goldstone. Now Goldstone would be blue with gold speckles in it. This is brown with gold speckles in it and very opaque. 59 is another one of those very samey colours, bit transparent this time, and that's called Champagne. And finally 60, which is this wonderful sparkly white called Chandelier. If I pull them away and you look at them like this, you can see we have got 1, 2, 3 that are very similar, and 1, 2 that are very similar, and we have 1, 2 that are very similar. So I think this set is very samey, and we've got this lovely red and a nice pink, so there is some variety in there. They are all sparkly, so they've all got mica in them. Unfortunately sparkle doesn't show up on camera, which is why in films sequins don't look very impressive, but on stage sequins looking amazing. It's the same kind of principle behind them. As always with the Prima paints, you know, they're a reasonably nice paint. They're not unpleasant to use. I'll just take out a watercolour postcard. These are my usual Aquafine student quality cold press watercolour postcards I use for swatching. I can just show you some more use of these a little bit, really. I've tried doing some mixes with them, and I don't know where I put those. They really just didn't do a lot. Oh, here we go. So I tried doing some mixes with them and couldn't really get a lot that was Flare mixed with something else, and then I took some colours from Pastel Dreams and mixed them with the white, and that's the Violet Storm, I think it's called, or something like that, from Pastel Dreams. Lilac Dreams, Lilac something. I haven't got my Pastel Dreams. I have got my Pastel Dreams set. It's Lilac Rain. It's nearly right. Lilac Rain mixed with champagne with with chandelier, and that actually is a really nice sparkly purple. So they could be useful for Christmas cards. You know, I think that this is where this is going to find its main use is Christmas cards. And when I first did my review earlier last week, the first thing I really thought was that these would be great for brush lettering because they're very similar to the fine tech paints that a lot of people like. The wonderful Christina Werner, who I will link to up here, who is now doing a Tuesday tutorial thingy, I think it's Tuesdays, where she does a brush lettering tutorial, and these would be great for brush lettering, I thought, but see, I don't do brush lettering, and I have got some of the Twinkling H2O's paints, which again are kind of similar, more twinkly than these. These are far less sparkly, but the fine tech ones are very expensive, and I thought these might be a good cheap alternative for people, and would be very good for card makers if they want to do brush lettering or whatever. And I am not a brush lettering person by any means, but I think they probably would lend themselves quite well. This is a poor man's Christina Werner going on here, just doing a really quick. Really quick demo of just the fact that you can sort of do lettering with them. They aren't so viscous that you can't do that, but you need to work kind of from the pan, and I'm using a fairly small brush here. I'm using a size 2 round. Is it round? Yes, it is round. Size 2 round Proline Plus from Pro Art in the UK. It's a really good company for brushes. They are really lovely brushes, and you just won't be disappointed with those. I really like them. So, you know, you can get quite good coverage. They're not that sparkly until they completely dry, so you might be disappointed with them. Let them dry is all I can say. There isn't really much scope for mixing with this set because you've got a red and you've got some yellows and a white, but you haven't got a blue. I think if they put a frost blue in here, it would have been a really cool set. So I'm going to pinch some Icy Sky, which is a kind of frost blue from the Pastel Dreams set, which is this one here, and just see if we can get any interesting colours. So I'm going to put some of that out. In fact, I'm going to go and get a bigger brush because this one's far too small. The Pastel Dreams set have got a lot of lithopone in them. They are so laden with it that I actually had a layer at the bottom of my paint water when I changed it after I reviewed that set, like a thick layer of white heavy powder. It was gross, but that is how they make them so opaque. So let's take some of that lovely light frost blue, and I'm going to mix it with, not a lot, just a small amount of Flare. I don't want to overpower it. Okay, so that has mixed, but it opacified the Flare, but it hasn't really taken up much of the blue. So I'll add a bit of Pool Party, which is that kind of Bahama sort of blue, next to it. And that's given quite an interesting grey, actually. Swatch that out. So that was a red with a greenish blue, which is why we've got a grey, ultimately. But it's a nice grey. Not an unpleasant grey. I'm sure I could find a use for that. And I'll just do... what else could I do? I could try doing with the yellow, which is Bumblebee, this opaque yellow over here. I could try that with Flare and see if we can get a serviceable orange. And actually I'll do Citrus, which is this more orange to begin with colour. And I'll do that next door to it, which is... not unpleasant colour. And we'll try both of them with just a tiny bit of Flare added to them. Because the nice thing with the Primas, of course, is whilst they're released as separate sets, they are, well, like all watercolours, you can mix them. So I'm just putting some spots there. Someone complained at one of my reviews recently. They were like, "Oh, but did you realise half this review is off camera?" And what they were referring to was like when I was swatching or something, I would do the brushing off camera. If you really want to see me go, and it really bothers you that you can't see it, I'm really confused as to why you'd want to see that. So this is Bumblebee mixed with Flare, which is quite a nice, reasonably opaque, but got some texture to it, kind of tone there. And this next one is Citrus mixed with Flare, which is a much warmer one. And we'll have to dry these down, of course, because the sparkle won't show yet. I think some people have seen the Prima watercolours and just assume that you're going to be able to use them as fine art watercolours, which may be true for like the early sets, the first two, the Tropicals and the Classics. But for these later sets, these are really much more niche. They're much more gouache or metallic or pearlescent, and really, I think, are really the domain of the mixed media artist. They're not the domain of the watercolourist, really. So can't see much sparkle. Oh, I can see a bit where this grey has dried down. There is a little bit of sparkle, and these two yellows have granulated really quite beautifully, but the granulation is the sparkle clumping, so that's quite interesting. When it dries, it's not going to be a flat sparkle like we get from Flare up here, which is a flat sparkle. These will be interesting. So you can mix them, you can do stuff with them, but it's a really samey set. I would not recommend them for painting. I would recommend them for brush lettering, or possibly painting backgrounds like, this one's Distress Ink, obviously, but if you just take a piece of cardstock, this is Tim Holtz watercolour cardstock, and I just rubbed some Distress Ink on it straight from the pads, and then I ran it through one of those, what are they called? Next Level embossing folders from We Are Memory Keepers by American Crafts. You can get a quite interesting background doing it, and if you look on the back, you can see quite easily how you could cut out stars from this. I think you can see the sort of star shapes, and then you could mount them on a card, or use them for something, or mount them on a card and actually get use out of them. So just for backgrounds and stuff, you could use these kinds of paints with the same sort of thing. And then another one that I did, I'm just playing really, I did this one with Distress Ink and a wood grain. You could do that kind of thing with these paints, just paint backgrounds and then emboss them to, cold emboss them to make an interesting backdrops. So there they are. The origins of these paints are interesting because the Jane Davenport sets, which I've done a discussion of, which I'll link in the iCards now. Those sets, I actually asked Jane Davenport who manufactures them because I was curious, because they are so similar to the Prima ones. I thought they must come from the same place. I think they're probably made by Mongyo in Korea. That is my view. I don't know if that's correct, but that's just my own view. By looking at Mongyo's product range, I can identify all the colours from the early Prima sets in the Mongyo catalogue. I think the more recent palettes from Decadent Pies onwards are probably custom colours for Prima, and I think Jane Davenport has got a mix of custom ones and off-the-shelf ones by the looks of it, because Jane does release the pigment information on hers, and so do Mongyo. So I can match up some of them, but not all of them. So if they are made by Mongyo, I think she's got some custom and some catalogue colours. That's my view anyway. I mean, I may not be correct there at all. There are loads of other manufacturers in Korea that could be making these paints. I'm just really speculating there. But Prima, please release your pigment information. I can guarantee there are probably very few proprietary pigments of your own in these sets. They are just going to be off-the-shelf pigments. I have only come across one paint in all my years of painting where the manufacturer doesn't release the pigment information, and that is Aqua Green by Winsor & Newton Professional, which was in their Twilight set. They don't release pigment information for it because I believe it was a colour they had made up for themselves, and there isn't a colour index number for it. And that is out of over 100 colours in their range now. So if you genuinely have proprietary pigments like they do that you can't release the details on, I would be really surprised, especially as I can identify the pigments in quite a lot of your paints. I have nothing against the Prima paints. I think they're great, but the thing that really lets the series down now is Jane Davenport is on the market, and Jane Davenport releases pigment information. So if you want to know what's in your paints and you want to know how they're going to behave, Jane Davenport is the place to be. Prima are letting you down because they won't give you that information. And they would probably argue that the mixed media artists and so on don't need that information. Well, actually, that's the mixed media artist's choice, right? You decide what you need. You don't get told what you need. So I really, really implore Prima, if you want to improve your product even further, and you have a nice product, I have nothing against your product at all, just release that information into the public domain and make it easier for people. It really will make a difference to people having that information and knowing what they're using. It gives them a choice, and I think that that choice should be in the hands of the artist, ultimately. So my view on this set, the Shimmering Lights, is buy it if you do brush lettering, Christmas cards, anything where you want to add a bit of sparkle, but it's not really one you can paint with. I think it was intentionally released for brush lettering. After I said that I think it should be for brush lettering, I spoke to Lindsay the Frugal Crafter, and she said she thought that it was intentionally released for brush lettering, and that was what it was marketed towards. I don't really know that because I haven't looked like on the manufacturer's website or whatever to kind of know that that's what they released it for, but I believe that that is the case, at least. So obviously make your own minds up, but I like them. I have nothing against them. I'm looking forward to Odyssey. I'm looking forward to the other new one. Odyssey excites me a bit more because they're kind of more transparent colours, and it'll be nice to have the transparent set after 3 pretty opaque ones. And I will try and do something with these in due course. I mean, I like the Pastoral Dream set. If you want to paint ice cream or you want to paint the beach on a very sunny day, it's a really nice set, but it's not really within my aesthetic. It's not really within the colour ranges that I would use because I tend to be a little bit more muted, even in my beach pictures. So we'll see, and we'll take it from there, I guess. So that's my views on them, and if you have any other comments on the Prima sets, please leave a comment and let me know which of their new ones that you really want me to review. And if you painted anything with the Prima paints, link it in the comments below, because I'd really love to see what you've painted, especially with Pastel Dreams and Shimmering Lights, because I think they're going to be a bit of a challenge to paint really good things with these sets. And I have to say, actually, that is something I really admire about Lindsay the Frugal Crafter. You could honestly give her, like, a burnt stick and a piece of kitchen roll, and she'd paint a beautiful picture with it, because she's really, really good as an artist. And you can always tell a really good artist because they can make beautiful things with the worst supplies. Shit artists like myself need high quality supplies because we're not so good at the level of control that we have and the ability to develop something so I can start painting, and if it doesn't work, I bin it. She's very good at rescuing it because she can almost see ahead, which is something I can't do. So it's always a sign of a very, very good artist that they can make shit supplies look amazing. So if you have managed to make something amazing with something like Pastel Dreams, which is not a shit supply, it's a great supply, but it's a very limited supply because it's got these really garish colours that are very opaque, it might be hard to actually paint painting with that. If you've done it, let me know, because I'd really love to see it. I think that's everything I wanted to say today. Thank you all very much, and good evening.